of different levels. I'm going to cover some basics as well as some other tips and tricks inside the system that you may be able to use. Now, for those of you that are brand new to the system, you know, a couple of things that you may or may not be aware of with LendingQB. It is two things: a 100% web-based system, so that means wherever you happen to be, provided that you have Internet Explorer as your web browser, you can access your pipeline, whether you're at the office or at home. The other thing to understand about LendingQB is that it is a complete end-to-end solution. So the same system that your loan officer originated in, you will process. You will pass it to your underwriter, and they will use. Docs will be drawn. Loan will be funded. So everything happens inside this one system. The LendingQB system is highly configurable and permission-driven. So once a loan officer does move that loan into processing, for all intents and purposes, they're going to be locked out. They're not going to be able to make changes inside the loan file. Once you pass this to underwriting, you may be locked out of some fields, but not all, because as a processor, you're not done, even though you've submitted the loan to underwriting. You still have work to be done on that loan file. So as the loan does progress, though, you may find that you will have fewer and fewer permissions and abilities to make changes inside the system. Now, throughout today's session, the way I'm going to be presenting this to you, I can train LendingQB backward, forward, upside down, and inside out. I know the system. And just for those of you that I've never spoken to before, I'm a 30-year mortgage professional. I started as a loan officer, and I've been everything from a loan officer all the way through VP of operations. My favorite position of all time, and don't tell anybody this, was actually processing. I loved processing more than I liked underwriting, though I liked it all. But point being is I understand what you need to do inside the system. What I don't know is your company's policies and procedures. So there may be times when I reference talk to your manager, or I may be a little bit vague about something. Again, talk to your manager, your supervisor, administrator, somebody in the organization that does know those company-specific answers that I may not necessarily know. Thank you for joining us. If you have dialed in, and I see you are using a microphone, if you wouldn't mind muting your microphone for us so that we don't have any feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay. Let's start with some basics. Now, I am in as an administrator. So here, when you are given your individual logins and you log into the system for the first time, if you haven't already, this left navigation panel will look different. You will only see those areas that you need in order to perform your job. So if you don't see all of that, don't panic. First thing I really want to talk about is the pipeline view here. The pipeline view that you see on your monitor is nothing more than a report. It's a report that was created in the system and then set to be your pipeline view. Now, as a processor, there's a number of different things that you're going to be using or needing, tools that you'll need in order to do your job and be proactive, not reactive. And your pipeline views are going to help you accomplish that. Now, there are a number of reports that were created in the system. And this first pipeline tab that you see, yours will most likely say My Pipeline. That's the standard default. It's one blue tab that says My Pipeline. Now, to change that, you'll come over here to where it says Now Showing and click on the word Change. That is a hyperlink that will actually open up a new window inside the system, and it's going to allow you to do a few things. Number one, you can change the name of that tab. I just named it active, as in these are my active loans. You can choose to name them anything you want. Just keep in mind, the longer your name of your tab, the longer that tab's going to be and the more room it'll take up. And you'll understand what that means and how that becomes significant in a moment. Next, you want to choose your visibility. Now, as a processor, day in, day out, show only loans that you are assigned to is probably what you want. You're concerned with the loans that you're responsible for and nothing else. However, there may be a time where somebody calls in sick, goes on vacation, and you're asked to help manage their pipeline in their absence. All you'll need to do is come in and show all loans you have access to. Then, if you have, let's say, branch permission level, you'll be able to see all of the loans in that branch. If you have corporate permission level, then you'll be able to see all loans throughout the corporation, throughout the company. So it is a little bit dependent on your permission level to start with, but it does allow you to see others and you can help manage their pipeline. Now here's the reports. There are quite a number of reports that have been created in the system. Some of these, as I go through, you have one here. Here's Arnell's. There's others. Here's one up here for Jonathan, for Kurt. Not sure what their roles are in the organization, but if they're processors, perhaps that report that they created will work for you. Perhaps not. So I would check some of them out. There might be one here that works for you. If not, then you can create your own. I found one down here that I'm just going to use, and it is called Processing Report. That's just the one I'm going to do. All you need to do is click Choose, and that will change that view to be that of that report. So now you see that my report has changed somewhat. I now have them grouped, and I'm going to guess that they're grouped by, well, my processor is the same. They're probably grouped, well, no, they're not grouped by status. I'm not sure what the group criteria here is because they're both all conventional, they're all purchase, could be branch, could be something else. But bottom line is this does illustrate that when you do create that report, you can have them grouped. Personally, as a processor, I'd want them grouped by status because I always worked my pipeline backward. I started with my loans that were funding that day and moved all the way up to until the end of the day, which is when I was reviewing new loan files. And that will help you accomplish that. Now, just your active loans may not be enough. On my active pipeline, do I really want to show loans that are on hold or suspended? Maybe I want a tab for those. Or maybe I want a tab for leads that my loan officers are working on, so that if they contact me and say, hey, I need you to send out a written VOE for Tina sample, I have access to it. It's right here. If I want to create another tab for some other purpose, I hit the plus button. Maybe I want a pipeline view that's going to help me monitor appraisals. So you've got a lot of options. I'm just going to call this one on hold, show loans that are assigned to me. I will find that report that shows the loans that are on hold, and I will select it, and that will be a new tab. I can then just take those tabs and I can move them around. I can put them in any order that I want to. Then throughout the day, I can simply change tabs so that I can manage my pipeline. So think and be creative. What's going to help you be proactive with your pipeline? Monitoring locks, maybe. Monitoring appraisals that were ordered and not received, and other services that were ordered and not received. So you've got quite a tool here that can help you. That's your pipeline view. Now, finding loans inside the system. How do you find loans? There's actually 3 different ways that you can find loans inside of LendingQB. And I'm going to actually go, oops, not that one. Let's go to this one. These headers. at the top of your pipeline view. You can resort by any one of these. So if you wanted to resort by the borrower's last name in an ascending or descending alphabetical order, you can do that. Since I only have 2 names among my 5 loans, it doesn't look very dynamic, but it does, as you can see, work. I can also do that with dates. Maybe this particular view is showing me locks that are expiring. If I wanted to resort by the numeric value, I can, so that I can bring up the oldest to the top and know that needs to be my priority. So that's one way that I can find loans inside my pipeline view. Number 2, there is this Find Loan. This is a hyperlink that takes you to another page. But right now I want you just to remember that hyperlink. The third is over here, Search. There's many different criteria that you can use. I think last name is probably one of the most common. And you can do partial searches, either by loan number or last name. Type in the first 3 or 4 letters of the borrower's last name and the asterisk key. That asterisk key indicates that that is a partial. If you're using the loan number, maybe you type in the last 4 digits of that loan number and the asterisk, again, to indicate it's a partial. Now I can click on Go, or I can hit Enter on my keyboard. Net effect is the same. The results of my query are right down here. I can simply click on the loan number, edit, and begin working on that loan file. Now remember on the upper left corner that Find Loan hyperlink that I pointed out? Had I clicked on that link, this is the page that we would have come to. So here I was looking for a specific loan when I typed in the borrower's last name or a partial. But maybe I'm looking for a group of loans. Perhaps I want to know all the loans from a particular branch in a particular status with a specific, well, I don't know, loan officer. I click on Pick User and I select that. I type in the name of the loan officer. I don't know if there's any Bobs, but let's go ahead and give it a, nope, no Bobs in the organization. But you type in the first name or the last name of that particular loan officer and add that to the search criteria. Once you've made your selections, you just hit Find Using Search Parameters, and the results of that query will be down here at the bottom of the page. So now if I've found all the information I was looking for, I can now come up to the very top of the page. Pipeline takes me right back to that pipeline view. The last thing I want to show you here on this page is this area that's called Your Settings. In here, your profile, all about you. You're going to be able to upload your signature onto your profile so that you can electronically sign documents inside of LendingQB. How about VOEs? Other documents that are in the eDoc system. You'll be able to drag and drop your signature. Your IT department should be able to help you do this. It's relatively easy. Easy for me to say since I've done my own, but it is fairly easy. The one key thing here to remember is when you sign that piece of paper and you scan it to yourself and you use some type of Photoshop, you have to isolate that signature. You've got to block out your signature and get rid of that field of white. Otherwise, when you upload your signature, if you don't do that, you just have this minuscule signature amongst a field of white. So that's really the key. The other little tip that I can give you, because the space that you're going to be signing that document is a confined space, and the background of your signature is not translucent. It is opaque, so it will cover up lines. So a suggestion or a tip that I have for those of you who have letters in your name like Y's and J's and other things, letters that drop below the line, so to speak, make sure that if you typically sign with a really big flourish, minimize that so that your signature doesn't extend too far below or too far above that line and cause you to have to make your signature very small. I'll show you how that works in a few moments. The other thing you might consider doing, there's a consumer portal that is perhaps being used by your loan officers. And in that consumer portal, your name as the assigned processor on that loan file will appear. If you want it to be accompanied by your own picture, you can go ahead and upload that here. All right, let's talk about a loan file. One loan file is assigned to you. It is part of your pipeline. It will appear on your pipeline, and you will receive an email notification. Now, emails, let me talk about that just real quick. I get it. I know I used to get in excess of over 200 emails a day. The last thing in the world I ever wanted was another email. Yes, you can come into your profile. Yes, you can turn those off, or some of them. But for a while, I wouldn't, especially those of you that are new. I would leave those set to yes for at least a period of time. And then maybe in your Outlook, create a rule that those do not reply emails are directed to a specific folder so that they're not filling up your inbox. And that way you can check that folder maybe once a day. See if there's anything in there that you missed, that didn't get captured on your pipeline view. And that just kind of gives you that safety net to know that the report that you're working from, that pipeline view that you're working from, is capturing everything. And then later on, if you after a month or two and you're confident that everything is working as you expect it, you're not missing any loans, then you can go ahead and turn them off if you choose. But it's just a good idea for at least a while to leave them on. Now, to open that loan that you want to work on, click on the loan number and then click on Edit. The ideal is two monitors. If you have 3, that's even more ideal. No, it's better. It's even better, but 2 is very doable. Now, I can, in fact, let me push this out of the way, because each time I open a new loan, it opens in a new window. So if I were to open 2 at the same time, I could have one on one window and one on another. I can also come up here and toggle between the 2. These are the 2 loans that I have up. So if I minimize one and I want to go to the other, I can go back and forth. That's just a little tip there that I want you to be aware of. Let me close that second one. And I'll bring this one over. Now, first and foremost, how did it get assigned to you? How did you know to work on that loan? Well, that happens up here in status. Once your loan officer has worked on that loan file and gathered all the documentation that's necessary for you to now begin doing your job, they come in and they put a date here in processing. That's what's causing it to come into your pipeline. Now, there may be an additional step. It's possible that it's going into a queue and your manager is assigning it to you. It may also be possible that you have a relationship in the system set up between yourself and specific loan officers, so that as soon as they do put a date in here, it is automatically assigned to you. Your manager will be able to clarify that, because that can happen a number of different ways. But once you've been assigned to that loan officer, or excuse me, that loan that's in processing, and here on the agent's page, you would have been assigned. So I'm going to go ahead and just assign it to myself or to the test person. That's my persona for today. Yeah, see, they could be assigning it to a processing queue, and then your manager is assigning them out to you. But this would be your name here, and that's how it Down toward the bottom is all of the tracking for all of the services that could potentially be ordered. Now, there is a second page called Processing, and it is an exact duplicate of the general page with the statuses, just not there. So depending on what you want to do, if you want to move this along to underwriting, okay, come to General. If I'm going to simply be updating the tracking of information of documents and data that I've ordered and or received, I'd probably come right to Processing. I don't have to scroll all the way down through all of that, all those statuses. There are three custom as your when you know it. It helps you now and it helps you later. And here's the example that I gave that loan officer. They're working on a purchase, and they need to put this loan into processing. And I'm their processor. One of the first things that I always do as a processor for a purchase in particular is I contact the closing agent. I introduce myself, and I request the goodies. Has entered that information here, and let's just say it's Debbie here in title. Probably wouldn't be, but work with me on this example. If it's Debbie, this in the blink of an eye. That opens up an outlet to my email and send that off. I pick up the phone number. Now, if it's not there, or where, that's time. That's time that I could have spent ordering another set of documents or doing something else. So enter what you know when you know it. It also applies to you as a processor. So if I'm working on this loan file and I've ordered the appraisal, and my appraiser is listed here just in blank, so for that appraiser, I can click on Edit. I'm going to pick from the contact database, contact entry, see if that appraiser exists. Now, there are a number of records here, and one of the things that will make it easier is utilize the search. I'm going to use Tammy, and there she is, Tammy Flower. I just take Tammy's information, I hit select, and it's going to populate all of that information. If this is a great example because all the information I need is here. It's critical if the contact is not here inside that database. You need to be adding to it as you work. And when you're adding to the database, be sure, A, that it does not already exist in some fashion or some other variation. You guys all know what I mean. First American Title, First American Title Insurance, First American Title Insurance Company. They're all the same, probably at the same address. And because people have put them in using different variations of the name, you now have 6 different records for the same person or company. So make sure that doesn't exist first. And number 2, when you are adding it, add all of the information, including the email address, include line phone number. Now we move on. Let me talk about if there's business rules inside your system to enforce completing the HMDA. Lastly on this page is the front end rate lock page. We already saw here on general that you can get the dates. If I look up here and see that this is locked, and I just need to know the dates, I can come to the general page. If I want to know detail about the loan officer's pricing, front end rate lock page is what I want, because it'll give me my base, my total of all of my LLPAs, and my final price. Here's the detail of the LLPAs on that loan file. And down here at the bottom, rate lock history. So if it was locked, extended, relocked, canceled, whatever the case may be, there will be a history of that down here at the bottom of the page. So that is my status folder. Now, to those of you especially that are new to the system, the first time that you open a loan file, all the folders are going to be open. And as a new user, I'm quite certain that's going to look a little bit overwhelming. So my suggestion to you, close them all. Now the next time that you go into a loan file, that's what it's going to look like. The folders will be closed. You actually will come into this page here. So it'll look like this. You come here to the, I call this the landing page. It's actually called This Loan Info, but I call it the landing page. Now, there are two ways to review a 1003. And I already mentioned I've been in the business for 30-odd years. So as you can imagine, I've looked at a lot of 1003s. I've completed a lot of 1003s. So when I started working for LendingQB, I really thought I was going to like the 1003 version here because it looks like a 1003. Follows the same format as the 1003, sort of. When I come down to the bottom of this page where I would normally expect to see employment information, there's no employment. It tells me to go to the employment. This is a hyperlink that takes me out to that page. Once I've completed that page or reviewed it, I can hit back, just like an internet web browser. It takes me back to the last page I was on, go on to page 2, and so on. But I found that there was a lot of jumping back and forth. If I needed to review subordinate financing information, I needed to use the hyperlink to go to that page, review it, and go back. Same thing with mortgage insurance. Am I of any kind, conventional or government? Review it and go back. So I felt like I was doing a lot of bouncing back and forth. That bothered me. Will it bother you? Not necessarily. I mean, it's a personal choice. There are two ways to do it. The other is to review the pages here in these 3 folders. These 3 folders comprise the bulk of a 1003. So it's really your choice. Try them both out, see what you like better. I think it's easier to just go page by page by page, skipping those that I know I don't need. So here, let's go through these pages. I want to point out some specific things that are unique to LendingQB on these pages. We already talked about the hyperlinks, and these certainly are hyperlinks here that can take you to those various pages if you wanted to, or you can wait until you get there. So for example, other financing P&I. If there were a value in this field, and I want to know how it was calculated, I can use the hyperlink to get to that page now, or I can wait until I click on it. Doesn't matter. On this page also you'll see there are a number of grayed out fields. Next to some of those grayed out fields are these lock boxes. A grayed out field inside of LendingQB means that that is a system calculated value, or that value was entered somewhere else and populated here for you. It would be correct and accurate. Now, next to some of these, there are lock boxes that will allow you to check the box, the lock box, and lock out LendingQB, allowing you to enter your own value. Now, can you do that? Yes. Should you do that? Almost never. It's really a bad habit. It's not something that you want to do. Because remember, it's an end-to-end solution. And if you start locking fields so that you can input values that you want, instead of allowing the system to calculate it correctly, now when I pass this over to underwriting, they're going to have to try and figure out how you got those values, where they came from, where they can get it corrected. It just is going to stop them dead in their tracks and cause them to have to regroup on the whole loan file. So resist the temptation. Find out where that value was calculated from. Correct it there so the system updates. And I'm going to use the mortgage insurance. There is a lockbox here. I can check that and overwrite the value. Can I? Yes. Should I? Never, ever. What I should be doing is if I want to know if this is a correct value, I use the hyperlink, save whatever changes I've made, and I go to that page. Or I wait until I get there. Either way works. the very next page. So I could have just paged down. But here, if this is not correct, I would change the factor, not the value. That's the correct behavior. When I'm done, I then go back. Now, there are about 4 lock fields in the system that is appropriate to use. Here is your first one, other expense, because that could be wind, flood, HO6, leasehold, winter, summer taxes, various things. It could be a number of different things that need to be included in the debt ratio. So this is the first field that is acceptable to lock and overwrite the system. On the next page, now I've had this come up a couple of times, and let me explain what this is. Lending QB, again, live environment, so it wants you to save and save often. More than one person can be in a file at the same time. Now, the likelihood of 2 people that can change data being in the loan file at the same time is pretty slim, because remember, the loan officer was locked out when that loan was assigned to you and moved to processing. And then once you put this into underwriting, it's really unlikely that you're going to be coming in and making changes while an underwriter is working on it. But the system does want you to save and save often. So you can accomplish this a couple of ways. You can let the system prompt you, which is what I've been allowing it to do. Or you can tell the system to save before attempting to navigate to the next page. Your choice. There isn't a right way or a wrong way. You'll find your rhythm in the system. Mine is kind of both. Some places I will let the system prompt me. Other times I will hit save. But that's the way that I've come to use the system, and you'll find, like I said, your own rhythm in the system. I want to talk about the upfront MIP funding fee page here. This is for MI of any kind, whether it is conventional or a government loan. There is an engine, you might see that right here, this Run Price My Loan engine here. That is a loan officer tool. The loan officers use the Price My Loan engine. But My Loan engine sounds like a pricing engine, and it is. It's also a true AUS underwriting engine, just like Fannie, just like Freddie. But it's actually a little bit better, because not only are all of the guidelines for Fannie and Freddie in there for all your products and all of your programs, but your investors' overlays for all of those products and programs is built into the system. Overlays that your company may have built into the system. When you run DU or LP, overlays are not a part of the equation. It's just the Fannie and Freddie guidelines that this engine is looking at. But Lending QB is looking at all of it. Investors, yours, and the GSEs. Number 2 is it also looks at the credit report, analyzes the credit report line by line, just like Fannie and Freddie does. It also analyzes for MI. So if it knows that this is an FHA loan, we have rules built in, we maintain those in the background that will have the system populate the correct upfront and monthly. Same thing happens for FHA or for VA and for USDA. On a conventional loan, all of the guidelines for most of the major MI companies are also built into this engine. So when the engine's running, if this loan requires MI, as our sample file does, it's 85% loan to value, it evaluates that data. Does that borrower qualify for that MI company? And then the rate cards are also built in so that the factors are populated. So this is going to be accurate. You won't need to change this. So the engine's doing all of that. When that loan officer registers a loan file, and they will register this before that loan is turned over to you, when that loan is registered, what does registered mean? It just means this is the product and program my borrower has identified that they want. That's all it means. It's floating. But it is the product and program that the borrower wants. But when they do that registration, all of the parameters of that loan populate onto the loan file. So when it needs MI, all the factors populate onto the loan file correctly and accurately. If it has an ARM, if it is an ARM that was selected, all the caps, margin, index, floor rate populate to the loan file correctly and accurately. You also know, or the loan officer also knows on day one, if they have been very careful with their data entry, that borrower qualifies. They know it on day one. They don't have to wait for it to get to underwriting. So that's how you become the benefactor. Because once a loan officer understands all that, it really is a motivating factor for them to do a little bit better with their data entry. It really is, or it should be. So that they know if that borrower qualifies or not. Does that property qualify or not? That means that you should be getting loans in your pipeline where the borrower and or the property clearly qualify and not get those that don't. Will that happen 100% of the time? I get it, no. But a loan officer, once understanding what this engine will do for them, the power of that engine, it really is in their best interest to be a little bit more mindful of their data entry. Bottom line is, this is going to be correct. You don't need to change it. The only thing you might want to check here is this one right here. Is the upfront MI funding fee going to be financed, yes or no? The other financing info page is very unique in the system, and this is used whether the transaction's a purchase or a refi. If it's a line or a loan, it's all the boxes that are checked and the data that's entered. So system's intuitive. It knows that this is a purchase and any new financing will be a new loan. So on a purchase, this box is checked. On a refi, it should be unchecked. What this box actually is telling the system is, should the current balance that is entered in this field here populate to the details of transaction or not? So purchase, box is checked. How about a loan, a fully amortized loan, second trustee, $25,000 second, and it's 7% interest rate and it's a 15-year, so I enter that as months. The system makes that P&I calculation, and if I were to save this, ratios would update, so would my loan to value. Now, how about a HELOC? That involves this one. Additional financing is a line of credit in a draw period. When I check that box, credit line opens up. Let's assume a $25,000 line of credit. But let's say at closing, they're only taking a $5,000 draw. My current balance becomes my draw. Let's take out rate and term, because on a HELOC, that's not typically how we qualify the borrower. It's a minimum qualifying payment, which I can then enter here under base payment. Again, if I were to save this, ratios would update, so would my CLTV and HCLTV based on the data I have here. Price My Loan Engine is the borrowers or loan officers. I skip that, come right down here to description. Pretty straightforward. This is the property information, project name here, condos and PUDs. Get your title report in, your title commitment, enter your APN number. A valid zip code will get you the correct city, state, and county when appropriate. The details page, this is really supplemental to your 1008. All this information flows from the 1003 and onto the 1008 when necessary. So if it's a condo or a PUD, project details, appraisal information when your appraisal comes back. If you're doing a streamline, this information will be necessary. Leasehold land, a purchase. Rental income, very unique page. There's very two very specific purposes and reasons when you will use this page. Everything else for rental happens on the REO. This page will only be used when your subject property is a 2 to 4 unit owner occupied, or it's a non-owner occupied purchase that's currently non-owner occupied, and you can use those existing rents to qualify your buyer. Like I said, two very specific circumstances. And in those circumstances, when you're qualifying the borrower, you're able to take gross rent at 75%, typically, maybe 70, depending on the investor and the product, and give that value, that calculated value, directly as income to your borrower. That's what happens on this page. So if this were a 2 to 4 unit, I would put in here the gross rent for the units that I didn't occupy. I would lock this, and it's acceptable to lock, because I need to put in my occupancy rate. And that can vary, as I said, depending on product and investor. Enter that there. If it is owner-occupied, check this box. Now this here, this is defaulted from whatever was entered here under this loan info. So that should already be correct, but it can be changed here and it would update throughout the system. But once I've entered the gross rent, the occupancy rate, and check the box for owner occupied, the system will calculate 75% of this value and give it directly as income. Again, any other rental property, that's on the REO, not here. Borrower info. A couple of key things for you to note here. I know this is small, and I will enlarge it again in a moment. Borrower's information is added. If there were a co-borrower, copy from borrower, and then just enter in the personal information. I know that this is something your loan officer does, but I also know that from time to time, borrowers are added later in the transaction. So that's how you'll add a spouse. A couple of things, I'm going to make this bigger, just so that I can point them out to you so you understand how the system works. The name that is populated here is what will ultimately be populating to the signature line of all of your loan documents, final loan documents. So make sure that that's consistent with the vested name. When the credit report is pulled inside the system, all the AKAs detected on that credit report populate here. Yes, additional can be added. If you know there's going to be a POA, type in here the name of the individual that will be signing. So if it is David, it's going to be signing for his wife, just type in David C. Test case. Give your underwriter the heads up that there will be a POA involved so that they don't, everybody's not sitting at the table going, wait a minute, we're doing this with a POA. And everybody's all, what POA? So just give people the heads up. There is that aliases and POAs link for every borrower on a loan file. When you're entering in numeric values, whether it's phone number, social, date of birth, just enter the correct number of digits. No dashes, hashes, or slashes are necessary. The system will populate it correctly. If an additional 1003 was needed, the borrower, of course, or excuse me, the loan officer, of course, would have already added that, but you would use this drop down up here to go between the two. Let me show you what they did. Add and swap co-borrower, save whatever changes were made, add new borrower. They can add as many 1003s as are needed. I'm just going to really shortcut this right now and save that. And that will allow me then, as I mentioned, to go between the two applications just by clicking on the name, and it takes me back and forth. Now I can further manage those co-borrowers by coming back to that add and swap link, and I can swap David and Donna on the same 1003 if that's appropriate. I can even delete a spouse. Maybe after her credit's been pulled, she's got 500 scores and not much you can do there, so you want to take her off the loan. You'll leave her on title, just take her off the loan. And maybe Sam just says, forget it, I don't want to be party to this transaction. Before you delete, that you are following company policy regarding adverse actions. Number two, unlike any other system that you've probably used in the past, this is a live environment. Once I've deleted that information, it is gone. There's no fail-safe that I go, "Ooh, shoot, wish I hadn't done that. Dang, oh, I know. I'll close out of the application, not save my changes, and go back in, and it'll be there." That doesn't work here. Then borrower employment, pretty straightforward. First thing to point out, toolbar. That toolbar is going to be present in your liability page, assets, and REO. Once you master it in one place, it works everywhere. A couple of things here. Add gives me my employers down here. My previous employers. A previous job, right here people will tend to want to put in the word current to indicate it. I can do that in LendingQB. You can only type in that field numeric values. So all you need to do is check the box current employment, populates the word present, which is Fannie and Freddie's verbiage. You just get better findings. The other thing, another thing about this, because this never happens, you get down to the day before funding or a couple of days before funding, and you find out through a verbal VOE or some other means that the borrower no longer works for ABC Distributing. He's got a new tip that I can give you. Add your new job. It will add it down here. Just highlight the new job that you just added and hit the swap button. That will move that new job up here to the top, and this one will be moved down here to the previous. Now you will need to adjust dates, but it's a whole lot better to just adjust a few dates than retype the whole kit and caboodle. So keep that in mind. Also, if you need a written VOE, you can do them from this page. Edit VOE. Click here. Save changes or not. Edit VOE. Edit VOE. Here's what I would do. If I were just needing to do one VOE for the current employment, I'd probably go ahead and do it from this page. Remember, everything I do here, any dates I enter, will follow through to other pages inside the system. But I could also order them by coming down to verifications and doing that here, VOEs. Now, if I had to do all verifs for all employments, I'd probably do it from this page. It'd just be a little bit easier. And all I need to do is hit edit. You know, I'm going to put in here, it's going to HR. My name, because I am the processor of record, already populated here. I have my signature on file. I apply my signature. Just click the button and it will sign the verif for me. I'm preparing this today, so I hit T for today. Now when I print and preview, I can be completely paperless if I have all the appropriate tools. So here's my verification of employment, and there's my signature. Looks like I signed the document. If I have the tools, I can come in and grab my highlighter, and I can highlight all the areas that we typically highlight. I can then save this to my desktop, go into eDocs and grab that borrower's authorization, attach the two documents to an eFax or an email, and send it off. If I don't have all of those tools, then yes, I can go ahead and print this and do the old-fashioned way. But I can be completely paperless inside the system. And then enter in the dates that it was ordered. You have all the other verifications you may need down here as well. So that's employment. Co-borrower has their own page, works exactly the same way. Monthly income. Now, there is a tool here that's probably going to be used more by loan officers than you as a processor. And that's when I click the base income, it opens up a calculator. And this is great and it's effective if you're going to be using base income only. Unfortunately, I can't average using this tool. So if it's appropriate for you to be averaging your income, you will need to do that outside the system and populate that value manually. But if the borrower is salaried and you're going to use base salary, and let's say you're looking at pay stubs that tell you $32.50 is my base salary, and they're paid biweekly, the system will make the calculation. What if they're actually paid semi-monthly? I can hit OK. Now, of course, if I have a co-borrower, I'll do the same thing for her or him. I hit OK, and that calculated value will populate for me. So it's a nice tool for base salary. But again, if you need to average, you will need to do that outside the system currently and populate that manually. Other income at the bottom here, really nice when you have a husband and wife, borrower, co-borrower, indicate whose income it is. When you have a husband and wife that are retired and both are earning retirement income and multiple sources, you can add as many lines as you need. All of this will be pushed out to Fannie, Freddie, provided that you use the drop-down list to tell the system what type of income it is, rather than doing this. You'll get better findings. I mean, although we all know what SSA income is, you and I know what it is. Everybody in your organization knows what it is, but Fannie and Freddie haven't got a clue. So loan officers that I talked to yesterday, they were all trained, use the drop-downs. That way you get very specific findings. You'll know exactly what to collect from the borrower to document the income type. The liability page. Borrower's credit will be populated here. And there's a few things that I'd like to show you that you can do to manage some of these liabilities. Oh, come on. Okay, I guess I only thought I clicked the button. All right, starting at the top. Alimony, child support. I'd like to point that out because it's sometimes easy to overlook, but it is right there. The loan officer has pulled the credit here, and the liabilities that are showing will be all the open trade lines with a balance and payment. If you wanted to look at the actual credit report, you could just hit View Credit right here. Now, I'm not sure which vendor you're using, but most of them will work the same way. I can actually come here inside of my credit report, and I could order a credit supplement by simply clicking on the creditor's name. It opens up a new window where I can check the boxes of whatever it is that I need a supplement for. I can also browse my computer and attach a document. So if I need to attach a borrower's authorization, for example, I can, or any other document for that matter. I want it on a rush, and I'm willing to pay for it. Submit the order. That will order that supplement directly with that credit vendor. Now, when the credit supplement is done, currently it does not come back into Lending QB. But at least you got 50% of the equation that's going to help you out. You will get an email from your vendor. They'll know who ordered it based on your login. So they'll advise you, here's your email. They'll advise you that it's complete. You'll just go out to that vendor site, grab that supplement, and upload it into the system. There may be some enhancements coming that will allow that to be a little bit more of an automatic process, but at least being able to order them inside the system, huge, huge. All right, so that's ordering of those supplements. Now, another thing that happens inside the system, let's say that the, here's that toolbar I was mentioning. Let's say this liability needs to be paid. You simply come down to the detail, show it to be paid, it deselects should be included in ratios. If you want it to both be paid and counted, you can reselect to have it be counted. Now there is a permission here. Exclude from underwriting is an additional permission. When our developers were creating Lending QB, to them it made sense. They're programmers, they're developers, they don't work in the mortgage business. So to them, it made sense that only an underwriter should have the ability to exclude a liability from underwriting. Well, not true, as you and I both know. And so this was made as an underwriting permission. So you would need the underwriting role in order to check that box. Exclude from underwriting, you would use that for an installment debt, less than 10 months to pay in full. You would use that if a parent co-signed for an auto or a student loan and they've got 12 months canceled checks to show that their son or daughter is paying that liability. You would be able to exclude that from underwriting. Now, I am happy to announce that no longer do you have to be given the underwriting permission to be able to use this. However, it will take an administrator of your system. So talk to Donna and see if they want to give you the permission. We can turn on what they call a bit in the background, which will allow all users to have access to exclude from underwriting, because currently, if it, let's use the this SM, this is an installment, and let's say this was being paid by a son or a daughter, I would have to manually come in here and bracket this balance, bracket this payment, so that it wouldn't be counted in the debt ratio as a processor. And then when my underwriter got a hold of the loan file, they would need to come in and unbracket these to check the box so that Fannie and Freddie understood what was going on. It's a lot of additional work that I just don't need to do. So talk to your administrators, see if they would be willing to contact our support team and ask for that bit to be turned on so that everybody has access to this. One last thing about this page, mortgage liabilities. Perhaps you've noticed as we've been talking about this page that this all says pay off, no, use in debt ratio, yes, unless we've indicated it to be paid off and saved it. I just didn't save those changes. With the exception of the mortgage liability, that says CREO. Well, it says CREO because that's where it's handled. It's positive cash flow or negative cash flow. But what your loan officer should have done it for you is when they highlighted that mortgage liability, they should have linked that to the appropriate property. So what they did was entered all of their properties on the REO page, all properties owned. Once the credit was on the file, they came to the first mortgage liability. They used the drop down and selected the property that was associated with that mortgage liability. They also would then hit this add balance and payment to REO. That pushed the balance and payment from the credit report onto the REO page. So when you're reviewing this loan file, if they have multiple mortgages, you'll know very clearly by clicking on and highlighting that mortgage liability which property it's associated with. When you are on the REO page, very similar to that, you can clearly see that which creditor or which liability is associated with what property. And because the loan officer pushed, quote unquote, the information over, the mortgage balance and payment should match. And you can see that it does. Now, Let's talk about the REO page for a moment. There are 4 ways of calculating cash flow. And if you handle each property on its own merit using one of these 4 methods, your cash flow will be accurate inside the system. The system knows exactly what to do with these behaviors, and all of these behaviors are understood very clearly by Fannie and Freddie. So first and foremost, let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see up at the more of the page. And I apologize, it makes this really small. Up here is your cumulative totals. Right here, from this point over, these are your rental cumulative totals. Over here will be your retained properties, your vacation homes, your second home. Fannie and Freddie handle those liabilities a little bit differently, so they are represented a little differently inside of LendingQB. Now, let's go ahead. Whoops, wrong way. Let's make this a little bigger. In here, of course, the property type, we're going to go with rental. There's 3 ways of calculating cash flow on a rental property. So let's go through those very quickly. Number 1, let's say this is a brand new rental. Borrower is buying a new property. This is their current home, and they're turning it into a rental. If that loan to value is low enough, it's possible that the guidelines will allow you to use offsetting rent. We're around the 50% mark, and so typically the borrower would be able to use offsetting rent. And to do that, you need to make sure that the loan officer has entered occupancy rate here, the gross rent is in, and that this box is not checked. That causes the system to calculate 75% of this value less PITI for a negative cash flow, which again is going to show cumulatively here. The second way to calculate cash flow, similar scenario, brand new rental, except let's go with the idea that the loan to value here is a little closer, maybe a 95% mark. You cannot use offsetting rent. All you need to do is take out the 75% or make sure it wasn't entered in the first place. I still want to enter the gross rent because that might be considered a compensating factor, perhaps. That will then cause the system to calculate these 2 values together for the total amount as a negative cash flow. The third way of calculating rental cash flow is tax returns, Schedule E. The borrower's been self-employed, or excuse me, the property's been a rental forever. So in that case, you're still going to enter the values just like you did before. That doesn't change. The only thing that does change is you're going to lock the cash flow box because you're calculating that value outside the system, and you need to be able to enter whatever that calculation is. If it's a negative cash flow, just put a minus sign in front of it. The system will know what to do with it. The fourth and final way to calculate cash flow has to do with second homes, vacation homes. Make sure this box is not checked. Status changes from rental to retained. That wipes out the gross rent. There is no gross rent on a vacation home. That causes the system, once I check this box, calculate cash flow, it causes the system to add up these 2 fields for the total amount. And now my value is over here on the right side, the retained side, not the rental. Use one of those 4 methods on each property individually, and the system will populate everything correctly for you. Present housing, pretty straightforward. They're either paying rent or a mortgage, enter whatever is appropriate. That's your 1003. Like I said, you could just as easily have gone through these pages. I would probably want to make a stop here very quickly on the 1003 third page, simply so that I can make sure that on my details of transaction, this has not been done. You want to be sure that the boxes on this are not checked. You want that information flowing freely from one page to the next, so that as you update the GFE, the correct values are populating here. One of the pages we skipped was assets. I want to show you here, my earnest money is already populated here. That's directly tied to my asset page. And on my asset page, As it goes over there, it's coming from right here. But there's that same toolbar, so it's add, add, add. Use the drop down. Again, tell Fannie and Freddie what this asset type is. 2 assets are not entered down here. 1, earnest money. That's entered up here by good faith deposit on purchases. And then the retired retirement funds, IRAs, SEPs, 401ks, and the like. So on page 3, details of transaction you'll want to review, and make sure that my declarations have been completed. If the declarations haven't been completed, you will want to do one of 2 things. You will want to ask your loan officer to complete them, in which case you will need to send that loan back to an earlier status, which I don't know if I'd want to do, but that's an option. The other thing is to have them come and tell you what these are, and you can update that. Same thing with the government monitoring. For the application, the date that the 6 pieces of RESPA data was entered will populate automatically onto your loan file. This information is grayed out. This comes from the loan officer's profile. So the loan officer's name, their NMLS number, their state license number, the branch they are associated with will automatically populate here based on their login. So these 3 folders, page 3, gives you a complete 1003. Now again, like I said, you could view this by looking at page 1, 2, and 3 here, your choice. The GFE. Inside the system, you'll be utilizing the GFE here. This is set to populate from the loan officer, so you don't need to do anything there. Preparing this today, I just hit T for today. Estimated closing date. When is the contract supposed to be consummating? Let's just say, for argument's sake, it's the 15th of July. Another way that I can enter dates in the system is what I've done here is I've entered the 6 digits that represent the date. That I want. So here, 0715. My first payment and consummation date will automatically populate. Now, if this is a refi transaction, had this loan been registered, remember what I talked about earlier about registering, had it been registered as an ARM, my caps would already be here. The questions here would already be complete based on that ARM information. The important questions 1 through 4 are populating based on that loan floating. Once this loan has been locked, questions 1 through 4, the important data information, updates based on that lock data. You'll then be able to go through and enter the fees. Now, the loan officers may come in and enter some of these fees that they know will occur. So let's say we know this is $475, and we're going to charge a tax service of $65. And like I said, you know your fees. These will come in from maybe a quote from your, and I'm throwing things in, you may not charge all this, I'm just throwing numbers in here. Enter what you know. The number of days is locked to 15. Purchase is already showing me I need 12 months for my upfront. If it was a government, already populated. My reserves, I can leave it at 2, or I can click on aggregate escrow and calculate the correct values. When I click on calculate aggregate escrow, it takes me to an interim page where I can validate the first payment. If I already added in my closing date, that's already going to be there. That initial escrow account. And you enter the number of months that are due in the month in which they are due. So in reading this, I have my property taxes here. This is telling me that taxes, property taxes, are paid January, and they're paid annually, every January. So you enter the number of months that are due in the month in which they are due. And that means I'm closing in July. That means the next premium will be due in the following July. If I have flood insurance, school taxes, or some other user-defined, I would do the same thing for those. I don't have any. I don't need to take these out. It's not calculating off of anything because those values are 0. Once I have this set the way I want, I hit OK. Go back. Takes me right back to that GFD page. And it will, we've got it locked. See how it didn't change? I'll show you a closing attorney. I'm going to enter that. I'm going to have in my owner's title, lender's title, whatever's been quoted to me. Let me just throw some values in here. Need to change these, but you may. For example, you may know this notary fee is going to be a mobile notary, which would then be an APR affecting item. So if you need to, add it in. If you need to add in additional fees, do so, all the way down. If I can do my recording fees 2 ways. I can lock this and I can put in a total amount if that's what I was quoted, or if my quote was a little bit more specific and they were broken down, whatever is entered in here. Oh my. I can enter and it will add up and populate. I'm having such trouble. The total. For transfer taxes, whether they're county, whether they're parish, city, state, whatever they happen to be, you can do them 2 ways. If you're given a complete quote of the amount, you can put in the total and have it populate. Or if you want to use a factor, you can do that as well. So make sure you have in all of your fees. Now, just to show you, let's go look at that details of transaction, or actually, let's show you this. You know, sometimes you're going to be seller paid items, lender paid credits, and such. That's what this column is for. And you have a little calendar, handy dandy calendar down here. I click on lender and seller credits. And the system will start totaling for me. So if I show these to be seller paids, you can see that the seller paids are starting to add up. So if you have a seller credit, it's a nice way of seeing what is, and you know, I have a $5,000 credit. I can watch and make sure I don't exceed that. Same thing would happen with lender. I just use the drop down and select lender rather than seller. when I look at the details of transaction, I don't have to go back to page 3 of the 1003. I've got the details of transaction right here. There are those seller paid closing costs already populated here for me. If I had indicated lender paid, they would be right here. Can I come in and do a lump sum? Sure, if that's my policy, I can do it that way as well. And because I unchecked these boxes, you can now see all of my numbers that I've indicated on my GFE have updated here. When I'm done, just hit minimize. I also have this escrow impounds. Remember, my impounds didn't update? Well, let's go to the escrow and impound setup, and that will tell us why. Looks like your company's policy is going to be, for disclosure purposes, 222 and 2. It's been locked and set to 2. 2 TO 2 TWO. Wow. Yeah. So you may not, and double check with your supervisor, with your manager. It may be that what we were looking at when that setting up of the initial impound might be something that you don't do at all. The system's defaulted to set the 2s. That may be the appropriate way for completing your disclosures. So double check that once the call is completed. The till page, really not much to check here. You do need to come in, hit T for today to put in today's date for the prepared date. But because that loan was registered, all of this information is going to be populated. You do not want to do disclosures unless a loan has been registered. All of this should also have been completed. So once all of that is completed, you're now ready to complete your disclosures. And to complete your disclosures, you're going to come down here to the services folder, DocMagic. Now, I'm not 100% certain whether you're doing disclosures through DocMagic or if you are doing them inside of Lending QB, export to DocMagic. If it's inside of Lending QB, you will hit print and be able to grab, and it looks like you may be doing initial disclosures inside of Lending QB. With TRID coming fast and furious, you will not be able to continue doing disclosures inside of Lending QB. Where the system is being updated to accommodate all of those TRID changes. However, we are not updating and including the new loan estimate or closing statement. Those would only be available through your vendor. So you may be doing those disclosures directly inside of Lending QB for today, but going forward, you will need to get that all set up and switch over. And if you are concerned about that, let your manager know. They can talk to our support team about how they go about making those changes. So those are your disclosures. Now, other services that are here for you. Other things that you'll do. Down in here, if the credit report were to expire, you could update that, and you could do that from the liabilities page, or you can come down to services and order credit. Either way. Okay? You can also submit to DO, LP, total scorecard, whichever is appropriate. Now, when you submit to DO, all you need to do is come down, submit to DO or DU, whichever is appropriate. Your credentials might be stored behind the scenes, in which case you'll just simply go directly out to Lending or to Fannie Mae. You won't even see this page. If this page pops up, then yes, you will need to enter your credentials here and here. Don't worry about these two fields. It's just here and here. ID, password, submit. But it is likely or possible that it was stored behind the scenes. Now what happens at that point is you will have all of that loan data pushed out to the Fannie Mae site. Fannie Mae window for the Fannie Mae site will open up on your monitor, and you'll run DO just like you do today. No difference. When you have your approve eligible findings, close the Fannie Mae window. You don't need to save the findings. They're going to come back into the system automatically. Close the Fannie Mae window. A new pop-up window will open, and it'll be defaulted to say, do you want to bring back the findings? It's defaulted with the box checked. Leave it alone. Don't ever uncheck that box, ever. Just at the bottom, hit OK. That's going to update the system. And right here, view DODU findings, your findings will populate here. So whether you do this in the beginning of the transaction, in the middle of the transaction, or right before you submit to underwriting, or all three, that's how you will run your Fannie Mae RDO. And again, this will always be the most current findings. So each time that you run DO, the findings that were there before will be overwritten and the new findings will be populated. Don't panic. All versions are automatically saved. Up to your internal company policy. Other tools that are here, number one, you may have instances where you need to send a loan out for prior approval to one of your correspondents, in which case you or you need to get it registered on their website or anything like that. If you do, you're going to need to save it to your desktop, to a C drive, wherever it is that you save it. So services, export to Fannie Mae. That saves your 3.2. You will need to enter your credentials one time only, and then hit remember login credentials. It will be there going forward. Remember way back in the beginning of this data entry, back here on the description page, I said, and here's where you enter your determination. When your flood cert comes back, several things happen inside the system. A copy of the certificate itself will automatically save inside of eDocs. On this tab here, flood certification data, this will all fill in. Looks pretty familiar. It's the form just on your page here inside the system. So this populates. In addition, up here in the description page, the zone will populate, and if flood insurance is required, it will also update. So that's your ordering flood. Other tools that you have here, request forms. Now, there is a request for appraisal form that you might find useful. Notice that I saved myself a lot of time. That agents page that I told you in the beginning, enter what you know when you know it. It helps you now and it helps you later. Here's the later. I don't have to do anything because I've already put my appraiser's information in here. If I wanted to use this form to order the appraisal, it's already for the most part completed. Title company is there. Selling agent is there. Enter what you know when you know it. Now, it's quite probable that you're not going to use this actual form for the appraisal. Most people have moved to using the an AMC, and they have a website. So it may or may not be used, but it's here in the event that you do. Request for insurance, I think, is still pretty widely used. Again, if I had my insurance agent indicated on my agent's page, that would already have been populated here. Mortgagee clause, is it going to be you? Well, if that is, I can go in here, select mortgagee, select it, and it's there. I don't need to do anything else. I may need to indicate what's going to be needed, flood, hazard, whatever is appropriate. Is it going to be impounded or escrowed or not? And any comments I need down here. There is a request for title form, a request for survey if that's ever needed. And I also have 4506T. This has been completed. It goes out with your initial disclosures, but you also have opportunities or instances, I should say, where a borrower needs to have more than one 4506T because you can only order one transcript type per. And for, you may have this set to 1040s, but the borrower's self-employed and you also need 1120s or 1120Ss or 1065s or all of the above. So here, it is defaulting to individual for your 1040s, W-2s, and such. But if you need corporate, the borrower's name is not what you need on that form. So you can lock this and overwrite and put the company name in. The Social Security number would become the EIN or TIN number. So it takes both formats of social or TIN before you could then print that document, send it out for them to sign. Now, I also have an FHA folder. My sample file here is set to be an FHA loan. And inside of FHA, when I do have an FHA, I can order my case number directly from inside my loan file. Because the 1003 has been completed, 99% of the data here is done. I do still need to come in and put in the year built, month and year built. I still need to do that. I still need to certify this information that, yes, this is true and correct. And yes, I do need to put in my ADP code. But then all I need to do is enter in my password, my credentials, and hit submit to FHA Connection. When my case number comes back, several things are going to happen. Number one, right here, view FHA Connection results. The case assignment will populate right here on this tab. A copy of that case assignment will also save into the eDocs. The next day, I need to do my holds tracking. So I can do my holds tracking. When holds tracking comes in, similar to the case assignment, this will update this tab right here because now I have a complete cleared case number, and the updated version will save to eDocs. I can also do a update of an existing case if I need to correct the spelling of a name or street name or borrower name. The case assignment number, the case number will already be populated here because I pulled the case assignment earlier. Case queries can be done. CAVers, LDP, GSAs. When I have pulled the case number, here on the addendum, this is my 92900, my case number will populate, and the date that the case number was assigned will also populate. I'll have to select the case or the section of the act. Most of this data on this page will already be set. It comes from your 1003. Questions 22 through 25 are FHA specific, so those will need to be completed. FHA transmittal summary, this is your LT. And I have a few other worksheets here. When this loan is set to be a VA, that folder will change to a VA folder. Unfortunately, there is no VA portal connection inside of LendingQB. You do still need to access that outside the system. It's a VA thing. It's not. I don't think that they allow that connection. But you will have all the forms that you need for your VA loans. If it is USDA, there is no USDA folder. However, USDA forms are in the forms folder, and there are the 2 forms that you need for USDA loans. Once you've done all the work that you need to do on that loan file and are ready for it to be underwritten, you'll simply do very much like the loan officer did. You'll come into the general page. You'll put a date here and submitted. And in the agent's page, assign. You'll probably assign this to an underwriting queue. But I want you to talk to your managers, your supervisor, about what is appropriate, because I do see a couple of other options here that might also be valid. Contract underwriting, I'm not sure. American Financial Resources, Pac Union, SunWest. Perhaps those selections are chosen when you are not delegated and you're submitting to them. So I do want you to make sure that you check with your supervisor on what the appropriate option is from here. Now, I did have to mute everybody because there was some background noises. First thing I'm going to do, I see that there are some questions that came through, and I want to just go through those real quick and make sure I've addressed everything. All right. Roy is asking about submitting to DO. And sending disclosures. I didn't really cover a lot of originator information today, Roy. Your administrators will be getting a copy of the, need to watch that video to get additional instruction on how to register and some of the other. That's a great question, Courtney. Courtney has asked a question, or actually she's kind of made a statement in there with a question, and that is when she's run DU or and brought the information back into Lending QB, it's overwriting data on her loan file. And that can happen. Remember when I told you that when you send over to DU, to run DU, and you're done, just close the window, close the Fannie Mae window, and it brings up that pop-up. There are 3 check boxes: bring back 1003, bring back credit, and bring back findings. Or actually, it's 1003, findings, and credit in that order. The middle one is the findings. Personally, I would only leave that one checked. Uncheck the 1003. Uncheck the credit report. You don't need to bring the 1003 data back. You've made all of your changes inside of Lending QB. You've pushed the correct data to Fannie Mae. There should be no reason to bring data back from Fannie Mae. And if you do, it's going to wipe out some of your dates and other data. So I think, Courtney, that's what's happening to you. Make sure when you do bring back your findings from Fannie Mae that only the findings, the middle checkbox, it's toward the bottom of the page, the middle checkbox is the only one you want. And that should from happening going forward. Great question. And check the mute button so that anybody who wants to ask questions can. Is there anyone, we have just about 15 minutes, maybe a little less, left in our session. Are there any other questions that haven't been asked? All right, awesome. Well, to those of you that are brand new to the system, I hope this gives you the tools that you will need to be successful inside of Lending QB. To those of you that are experienced, I hope you picked up at least one nugget inside the system today that will make it work a little more optimally for you. If you need help in any other way or for any other reason going forward, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I thank you for your time today, and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.